Oh, see, she's being all shy and coy here. I don't buy that about Mary Boleyn personally. Were they gay? Were they not gay? Were they gay? Were they not gay? They were totally gay.
That's enough.
This is a Freudian nightmare, isn't it? Is your mum turning up? If only that was the only bang that was going to happen that night, eh? Hi, I'm Kate Lister. I'm a sex historian and the host of the Betwixt the Sheets podcast with History Hit. And I'm here today to talk you through some love and relationship and sex scenes in movies and to see what is right and what is wrong and what's a historian's take on that. So let's get into it. The favourite. Oh, what the f*** is that? No, he deserved that.
Hurt.
In the 18th century, there was, and beyond, there was actually this kind of idea that when women said no, they really meant yes, which might be kind of what you're seeing here. Thankfully, that attitude has had no negative repercussions on our own culture. Oh, hello. Yes, go on, give him a kick.
I've just now decided to marry you, Matt.
I cannot.
Ah, she's trying to get him to marry. Yeah, don't you give it up, Emma.
I know it would ruin you to marry me. I'll fix things for us.
I mean, it would have been really common, wouldn't it, for masters to exploit their female servants. But she's playing a dangerous game there. Oh, Queen Anne and Lady Churchill. Were they lesbians? Again, we don't know. We don't know. There were certainly satirical pamphlets written at the time that said that they did dark deeds at night. She had like loads of miscarriages and dead children as well. Really sad. I hope she was. Yeah, you get your lesbian on, Anne. You do you. Oh. Shocked. I mean, it's a dangerous game. It's dangerous. You want to be the official mistress / favourite / love interest. In some ways, probably the safest option is to have sex with them and try and get a nice necklace and move on. But the second they start exerting political influence, like Lady Churchill definitely did with Queen Anne, then it starts to become a bit more serious, and then other people are involved because there's a political influence, and they were widely satirised in the press at the time, so people kind of knew it was like an open secret. I mean, she had a huge amount of power. She did, so she played that game quite well. But other royal mistresses and favourites do come to sticky ends. They can be bumped off, they can be deposed, they can be chased out of the country, they can be locked up in a convent. It's a dangerous game, but if you play it well, yeah, the rewards are exceptional. Yes, Queen Anne, for my money, she probably was a lesbian. I'd say so. She did have gout, she was in a lot of pain, and I think that Olivia Colman plays her absolutely brilliantly. Yeah, I think I'd go for a 9 for that one. Actually, I think that was a good job, that one. Alexander. I've been in nightclubs like this. What are we doing? Sexy time, sex time. Greek person. He looks impressed. Alexander. So this is where Alexander meets Bagoas, who was a eunuch. That's Hephaestion, and there's a whole...
Was certainly one of the great king's favorites. Oh, he's met well with the year.
And there's, in some of the sources, it does actually say that like Alexander openly kissed him and hugged him, and so they were pretty confident that they were lovers.
Where does he come from?
The north side. From the hills near Susa.
You speak our language. Good. I'd like to learn yours.
I bet you would. Probably what you're not seeing here, though, is Bagoas was described as being in the flower of boyhood, which probably means he was about 14 years old, which is not what's happening here. So Alexander's is a bit of a nonce.
And that's the same with every person in the harem.
But he's definitely having fun, isn't he? And there's a lot of debate about was Alexander gay? Was he bisexual? There's some reports about sex with women, some with men. Quite a lot with eunuchs with Bagoas here. Oh, look at this fun. Lads, lads, lads.
To Babylon.
This is Alexander. Terribly hungover after a night on the town.
Not enough for the men.
Okay, he's on his deathbed. And that's Bagoas tending to him. And he really did stay with him throughout his whole life, so it was more than just a quick shag down the harem.
You prop me up a little, it catches me.
And Bagoas was actually the lover of Darius III of Persia as well, so the boy got around.
I've never been so idle. The fleet will never get out by spring. I must go.
Oh, look at him. His hair's not blonde anymore, look at that. He's only like 34 when he died.
You have given me all. Bagoas.
And you have given me the happiest times in my life, Alexander.
Alexander, like, he conquered the known world, hadn't he, in his early 30s. I think I was still doing beer bongs in the park and I was in my early 30s.
Bagoas. It is done.
Look at this dramatic dying. Oh, Bagoas, don't worry, you're still pretty. Go get yourself another king. I don't think he did, actually. I think he died quite young as well. So yeah, so there's a lot of debate around Alexander's sexuality, as there is with all historical figures, actually, because they're not here. They're not here to explain themselves, and all we've got is like fragments of records. So, and there's no diary of Alexander's, the diary where he writes who he has a crush on, so it's all people writing about him, and some a long time after he's dead as well. But there's some sources that say that he really shunned the company of women. Apparently his mum used to like hire really expensive courtesans to try and tempt him, and some accounts say that he was quite into it and some say that he wasn't, but he definitely seems to have had these intensely close friendships to men. Hephaestion was like his great love, and it's said that when Hephaestion died, Alexander just absolutely went to pieces. He was just and that might have actually hastened his death, some historians have even said. And they used to compare themselves to the Greek myth figures Achilles and Patroclus, who were also lovers, probably. So yeah, so I think that they were. For my money, they were lovers, definitely, but it's always, we're never going to quite know for sure, are we? I'm going to have to deduct some points for the Irish accent seeping through there. But I'm going to score it quite highly because they didn't flinch away from the fact that Alexander, he liked he just did. And they didn't flinch or shy away from it, as I've seen some of them do, where they were just really, really good friends, just really good mates. So the fact that they have brought in Bagoas, who was a eunuch, and they've got him there, and he's quite sexy, I'll score it highly for that. But also, they did flinch from the fact that Bagoas would have been 14, so not quite so sexy. So I think I'm going to give that a 7. The Other Boleyn Girl.
Crowds are with her. The crowds have no vote. And the bishops that do are in Moses' pocket.
The story of Anne Boleyn's quite well known, isn't it? But Mary Boleyn, her sister, not quite so well known.
So, the Boleyn whores.
Strong work, Catherine. That, wow. Boom. I mean, it must have been awful, right? Because like Anne Boleyn was her lady in waiting. So she just had to like go about her day with this woman, like, you know, fetching and carrying for her, knowing that she's banging her husband. And Mary Boleyn was Henry's lover for years before Anne stepped in.
Well, I shall not. You want me to lie before God and admit my first marriage was consummated?
I mean, she's got balls of steel, doesn't she, Anne Boleyn, really? And what must Mary have been thinking? You know, this has been your lover of years, and then your younger sister turns up, and now you're trying to overthrow a religion, an empire.
Me to within an inch of my life. I am Catherine, Queen of England. the king's one true wife and mother of the heir to the throne, beloved of the people and beloved of a king.
Oh, didn't work though, did it? Henry couldn't wait to be shot of her. And he would just check anything and everything with Henry VIII. He was absolutely riddled with it. Apparently that's why he really liked Anne though, is because she resisted his advances. Played hard to get.
So this is it. Where the King of England sleeps.
Oh, see, she's being all shy and coy here. I don't buy that about Mary Boleyn personally. She was married. She was actually, so this is an affair.
Because I like you. And trust you.
And she'd been the mistress of King Francis I in France. So the girl's got form. He wasn't very nice about her, actually. He called her his English mare. And the great whore, he called her as well. So that's a move, isn't it?
My flattery makes you uncomfortable.
Oh, look at her. She's all coy. She's not. She knows exactly what she's doing. And her husband knew as well, probably. That was not uncommon, actually. Because, you know, what are you going to do if the king wants to shag your wife? You can't say no. So you may as well give up to the situation and ask him for a castle, which is kind of what happened.
Forever in the shadows.
And her face probably would have been pockmarked with something. Her teeth definitely wouldn't have been that white. Neither would his. But she was supposed to be quite pretty, by all accounts. Oh, he's carrying her. That old move, swept her off her feet. I had a partner who did that once, but he buckled. And he was quite ripped, Henry, in his youth. When he got older, he kind of got fatter and he was covered in sores and riddled with this, that and the other. But in his youth, he was a fine piece of man. And so it's only in recent years, actually, that we found what we think is a portrait of Mary. We're still not entirely sure what she looked like. But did she leave the country? Fell out with her father and her sister. It took years for them to be reconciled. She did have a reasonably happy ending, though, did Mary? She buggered off and eventually she married a soldier. Her first husband died. There's some debate to whether or not her kids were actually her husband's kids or Henry's kids. She did call one of them Henry. There is a significant difference, isn't there, between being a good lover and being good in the bedroom and being allowed to shag anyone you want, which is what Henry was allowed to do. Not only was it like completely expected for kings to have mistresses, it was even an official position at court. It was absolutely expected. But he is the most powerful man in the country. So he can have sex with pretty much anyone that he wants to, and he does. He has numerous mistresses, not just the Boleyn girls, but like many, many ladies in waiting. And although it sounds like quite predatory and creepy and kind of Weinstein-esque, and it was, let's not pretend that it wasn't, for a lot of aspiring people at court, it was also a really good route to getting money and serious political influence. He had a number of illegitimate children, but they couldn't claim the throne. But that was a good way to get money from him, and you know, and he looked after Mary's children actually, and she got like quite a lot of money out of him. So if you were power hungry enough, shagging the king, that could be a good route, and many people took it. In fact, husbands quite often just offered up their wives and turned a blind eye. Was he a good lover? Apparently, one of the things Anne Boleyn was put on trial for was making fun of the king's technique in bed. She said that he lacked potency and vigour. So he can have sex with a lot of people. It doesn't mean that he's very good at it, though. And even sex for when they've got their own room, like Henry there quite clearly has got, you know, his own space. But you would have to have, there were no texts. You couldn't drop into Mary Boleyn's DMs and, you know, 3 a.m. you up, that he couldn't do that. So he'd had to have arranged with her, which meant somebody bringing her a note probably, and there being written documentation. They'd have to have organised it so people knew. Yeah, I think that one actually did quite well. I think although Mary Boleyn was kind of played as this quite coy, shy, oh, Your Majesty bit, and I think that she was actually a bit more active and naughty than that. That it did happen. They did have an affair. They were the Boleyn whores. Catherine of Aragon rightly hated them, and Henry really liked them. So I think that I'm probably going to score that one quite highly. I'm going to give that an 8. Titanic.
They assumed he was one of them. Heir to a railroad fortune, perhaps. New money, obviously, but still a member of the club.
Oh, here he comes. Apparently he's like over 6 foot tall in real life as Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know what I always thought of him as little.
The best I've seen, ma'am. Hardly any rats.
I mean, the Titanic was divided into class like this, and it was the absolute height of luxury, the most luxurious that you could have. Even the third class cabins were considered to be very luxurious third class cabins. But I just don't think that he would have been allowed in this atmosphere. He just wouldn't have been allowed in third class. It's kind of, it's a very romanticised, even if he'd saved her life, they just wouldn't have mixed like this. I really don't think.
He knows every rivet in her, don't you, Thomas?
Indeed.
Your ship is a wonder, Mr. Andrews, truly.
Thank you, Rose. How do you take your caviar, sir?
No caviar for me, thanks. Never did like it much.
And where exactly do you live, Mr. Dawson?
Well, right now my address is the RMS Titanic.
I mean, he's kind of like being paraded like a novelty here, isn't he? Like, you know, look, we have a pour at dinner. So there isn't actually an earlier scene where Rose makes a reference to Freud and his work on penis sizes, but that hadn't been published by the time the Titanic sunk, so that's a little anachronism.
A real man makes his own luck, Archie. Right, Dawson?
And you find that sort of rootless existence appealing, do you?
And the makeup, I don't think that the women would have been wearing makeup this heavy, not in 1912. It was very no makeup, very natural. Any makeup was this kind of, only painted ladies and harlots and actresses had makeup, so they wouldn't have looked like this.
Who I'm gonna meet, where I'm gonna wind up. Just the other night I was sleeping under a bridge and now here I am.
And there's this whole like thing going through, isn't there, about how like, you know, the upper classes, yes, they're very privileged, but it's a very restricted life, and it's very, and the poor people may be poor, but they're having fun. I'm not so sure about that one. I think that being poor would have actually been a bag of shit, especially aboard the Titanic, because most third class passengers died. Oh, look at their little baby faces. I actually don't think that Rose and Jack would have ever met, because third class was just not allowed on first class decks at all. So the idea that he'd be invited for dinner, even if he'd managed to save their life, I don't think so. Oh, but this is a lovely scene, isn't it? Oh, here we go, the iconic. Although, why are they knobbing in a car when they just had, like, the bedroom there? Fair enough, it's not the first. I actually did read somewhere that make of car wasn't actually available at the time, so the whole movie's ruined now.
Thank you.
And a fashion historian did once tell me that Rose would not have been in this perfect pristine white, because running through all the sort of the bowels of the ship there, it was steam powered, and so she'd have been covered in soot. So she wouldn't have been this kind of pristine white. She'd have been a mucky pup. Would a high-class girl have done this? Would she have shagged him in the back of a car? I mean, it did happen, didn't it? It did. Oh, bless them. Jack and Rose, everyone. If only that was the only bang that was going to happen that night, eh? I mean, class, it still affects us today in ways that perhaps we're not entirely aware of. Like, we are more fluid now, but the idea of social class, when the Titanic was around, it was really, really rigid. I mean, there was some social mobility, it wasn't completely unheard of, but Rose, we're dealing with like the real cream of the aristocracy, lots of money involved. And, you know, we say like today class doesn't come into it, but like how many lords and ladies do you know that you hang out with, you know? So it still is very much a part of it. And Jack is at the complete other end of the spectrum. Like, he's homeless when she meets him, isn't she? So we're really talking about a super, super wealthy woman wearing diamonds the size of a fist, shagging a homeless guy in a car on a ship. So it's a real clash, isn't it? It's a lovely love story. But I think that the actual class divide would have been so strict that I really don't think that in real life they would have met. In fact, I think that Rose probably would have used Jack's body as a lifeboat if she could in real life, because I just don't think that they would have met at all. Well, I love Titanic. I love Titanic. I do. I love Titanic. It's very visually pretty, and I know that a lot of research went in as well to making it as historically accurate as possible. But I just can't get past the fact that I just don't think that it would have happened. But I do like the costumes, and it's pretty. 7. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Robin Hood.
C'est fini. Yes, I know, but it's my mother. That's enough.
This is a Freudian nightmare, isn't it? Is your mum turning up?
No, I will not have you in my presence.
Mother.
Soon to be King John and his mum, Eleanor of Aquitaine. And he's banging Isabella of France. Oh, that's his poor wife.
Amusement.
Her uncle is the bloody King of France.
C'est vrai. My
Get
uncle
down.
is...
I mean, she was a hard-ass bitch, was Eleanor of Aquitaine. I don't know if she'd have done this, though.
Excuse to cross the channel with an army, and you have given him that.
I can tell you this much. King John was described as being barrel-bellied, and he was quite short, and he had red hair. So this glistening six-pack thing going on.
You, who honoured your husband with 8 children, so that even now, when death has taken the rest, you have a king and the...
Yeah, he was actually the youngest son of like 4. He wasn't supposed to be on the throne at all.
I've asked the Pope's man to arrange an annulment.
And do you think the Pope will favour England's royal right over the King of France?
He might see his way for the son of Eleanor of Aquitaine.
And for the future King of England. Richard the Lionheart is 40 years old.
So if that's King John's second wife to be, that he did get his first marriage annulled so he could marry her, she was actually either 12 or 14 when she married him. So this, she's a sexy, strong, independent French lady with amazing skin. No, she would have been 12, 14, and that rather puts a different spin on this particular scene. Whether or not actual royals would have found it really easy to meet up and have sex, even if your mum walked in on you to shout at you, probably not, because these people are surrounded by guards all the time. Their every moment is watched. Like, you were talking about a serious international incident, kidnapping a princess and then shagging her before marriage. Although it does seem that was actually a reasonably good way to ensure a marriage if your parents said no. Because if you've lost your virginity before marriage, you now have to marry this person. So, but no, it wouldn't have been that easy to do that. So it's difficult because I quite like that scene. I think it's quite good, and I think the guy playing King John is quite sexy. But King John was not sexy. He was a redhead, and he was short, and he was quite chunky. And I don't think that his mum ever walked in on him. And his wife, second wife, would have been 12 at the time. I have to give it a 4.
Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.